How's it going, everyone? I'm Nick, and you're listening to episode 40 of the Fresh Perspective podcast. Chronic stress is a big problem in our modern world. It can sap our energy, positivity, focus, patience, and motivation. It can lead to procrastination and depression, as it negatively impacts almost every aspect of our lives. Sometimes we could do something about the things that stress us out. Other times, however, we can't. So how can we deal with the corrosive anxiety that can loom over us day after day? Well, we could start by taking back some control, by better organizing our lives, planning out our days, cleaning our living spaces, and by using the practical knowledge gained through the science of human psychology. Sage, Cristina, Sam, and Jacob have returned to help me explore this week's topic. Our last conversation on John Stuart Mill's Utilitarianism went so well that we've opted to record another one of our public online meetings. I'm happy to say that we're also joined by our new friends Alice, Walter, and Irene, who stopped by to give one of our meetings a try. I was impressed by the breadth and depth of the advice shared in this discussion, and I'm sure you will be too. Many insights and experiences were also shared with stunning honesty, something I find refreshing and fitting in a discussion on such important issues. This program is brought to you by your local Free Thought Forum. Our members come together from various belief systems and backgrounds to share their perspectives, hear new ideas, develop positive friendships, volunteer, and learn more about science, philosophy, and life skills. Every meeting is a celebration of free speech, civil discussion, and the free exchange of ideas. We want to ensure that as many people as possible have the opportunity to speak their mind and have their ideas contested and reviewed among peers in an inclusive and supportive community. So, we are now authorizing the creation of new chapters around the world. If you would like to start a new chapter in your community, find official events near you, participate in our online meetings, or support our programs with a donation, please visit freethoughtforum.org for more information.
All right, yes. Let's see. Free Thought Forum, discussion primer. Organizing your life, managing stress through simplicity and schedules, healthy habits and life skills. Introduction. What is an example of a moment in your life when you felt happy and in control?
So the first example that came to my mind isn't really related to anything too special. A few days ago, my wife and I decided to spend a little money to get an extra set of shelves, a few more containers, and we basically dedicated one of our days off just to going through our things in our bedroom and just reorganizing things, putting books on new shelves, desk supplies in new drawers and things like that. And at the end of it, rather than feeling like we wasted one of our days off, we felt terrific. We felt amazing. and we very happily just, relaxed after that and looked around saying, oh my gosh, this is the most organized we've been in a while. And yeah, it definitely did make us feel happy. So
thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate you sharing that experience. I just moved from Maryland. So this is Alice. I just moved from Maryland about 3 months ago, and everything was very chaotic when I first moved here with hundreds of boxes everywhere. And it's been a big shift for me to just work on organizing. And I was able to get a lot of things put away finally. There was this junk drawer in the kitchen that I thought maybe for the first time ever, I would try to organize with these desk organizers I got from a container store. And so I bought a bunch of containers and I put it in the desk drawer, the junk drawer, and I organized everything and kind of put them in different categories and put them in these bins in the junk drawer. It was the very first time I've ever done that for a junk drawer. And in the end, I also felt very triumphant, like I had done something really amazing. And it was a sense of happiness about being organized in a space that I had never tried to organize before, and seeing it happen within, it took about 25 minutes or so to do that, but it felt like I accomplished something pretty awesome.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that. It reminds me of that one scene in The Incredibles. Maybe you guys know what I'm talking about, where Helen basically says, "Oh, we've officially moved in now because I finally unpacked the last box."
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it's funny. Like, is there something special about organizing things, or finally getting rid of that junk drawer? Like, we all have junk drawers, miscellaneous drawers. Those are terrible. Get rid of those right now, guys. Like, but is there something special about those that give us that high? Or this is something that I'll argue later on. Are we finally realizing that we've been dedicating so much of our emotions, so much of our mind to dealing with that chaos, and finally that burden has been lifted off our shoulders, and now we can say, "Oh wow, this is a lot more peaceful than I thought it was going to be." So I think I'm going to argue that the latter is the case, but I don't know. We'll see. Does anyone else have an example of a moment in their life when they felt happy or in control?
This is Walter Adams speaking. I'm taking more of a meta-analysis of my life. I would have to say my period in high school when there was no necessity of needing to have a lot of responsibility or things like that, because really ever since becoming an, quote, adult, unquote, and my wife might question that, I have not really felt happy. Life's been hard. I've never ever felt I've been doing what as well as I should be. It's not like back in high school when I had my '69 Dodge Charger and I could just go cruising and have fun with the friends. And I don't know if it's a matter of organizing my priorities or what, but the happiness is gone since high school.
Yeah, I actually really appreciate you bringing that up, Walt, because I think many of us went through in our minds when we read that question, we were thinking, oh, okay, well, when was a special time? And I went back to my wedding. My wedding, although it was a terrific, wonderful day, it's not exactly a time when I felt an overabundance of control, right? There were a lot of moving parts. There were a lot of people who did a lot of very specific things. And there was some stress that came with that. And I thought, well, what about a special party that I threw for my wife or something? Well, no, again, I didn't really feel very in control because there were so many moving parts. And so then, kind of like what you were saying, Walt, I thought back to when was a very simple time that was incredibly easy to manage. You talked about living in high school. I thought of things like, well, last time I did the dishes, or last time I took my cats out for a walk. My wife and I got a little stroller for them. we put the cats. Yeah, we put the cats in the stroller, and I just walk around my block a couple times. Again, almost no moving parts, almost nothing could go wrong. That made me feel very happy and in control. So yeah, I agree with you, Walt, 100%. As our lives have become more complicated and there's been more points of failure, that stress kind of compounds, and it never really goes away. It just keeps adding on to itself.
This is Irene. I think not just organizing yourself in any aspect of your lives, but it's through, your subtitle here says, through simplicity, because as you organizing it, you simplifies it. For example, like what Alice says when she was doing her junk drawer, I'm sure in the process of organizing that junk drawer, she minimized quite a few items, realized that she didn't need it, and it's been there, cluttered the little drawer. So that goes with our bigger, larger agenda in our life too.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
We definitely all have more than we want or need in our life, whether it's objects or emotional needs or tangible or non-tangible things, in our lives. We definitely all carry too much, more than we need. I personally felt like simplifies it is the key.
I tend to agree, Irene, because I feel like, I don't know, I think we deserve a little bit of slack. We deserve a little bit of we should be patient with ourselves, because it's almost like we're up against a force of nature. Correct me if I'm going too crazy here, guys, but it's almost like there's this entropy that constantly just adds stress and confusion and complexity to our day-to-day lives. And it takes a lot of work to kind of swim against the stream. I hope I'm making sense.
It does.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that use of the word entropy. We don't really realize how things will normally fall apart and get more and more disorganized in life. And it really requires energy, input, and creativity and intention to create more order. So we're constantly holding up a boulder, just we don't even realize that we're holding it up, but there's always that weight against us at all times. And if we don't do something about it, it definitely will create more disorder and chaos.
Yeah, you remind me of the story of what is the guy Hephaestus? Who is the Greek tragic figure that has to keep pushing the boulder up the hill? Who is that, guys?
No, that's Sisyphus.
No, was it the guy that holds him up is Atlas, but the guy,
Yes.
the one about the guy that pushes the boulder.
The boulder roller is Sisyphus.
Sisyphus.
okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
Sisyphus.
Let's keep pushing this boulder up the hill then, and let's tackle some psychology. Sam, could you be kind enough to read that section for us?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. The psychology of stress. Your brain is an energy management machine that attempts to regulate your body's resources and systems to best meet the demands of your day-to-day life. Usually, this is an efficient process with short and long-term benefits. When you perceive an emergency, challenge, threat, or that something is just beyond your ability to control, your sympathetic nervous system reacts by raising the levels of your body's adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine, and other chemicals. These trigger your fight, like a mother bear, flight, like a startled bird, or freeze, like a deer in the headlights response, so that your mind and body can rise to the event. We experience these physical and psychological phenomena as stress. And then the question that we have is, what are signs that a child or pet is overstimulated? How can you tell when you are stressed?
So let's go ahead and tackle those questions one at a time. But before we do that, one thing that I found interesting in my research is that your body attempts to meet these challenges that we face in a proportionate way. Your system tries to meet these emergencies, exactly at their level, no more, no less. And later on, when we talk about chronic stress, that level, of getting aroused right at the right amount, that is a little bit out of whack, partially because we've abused this, this sympathetic nervous response. But yeah, let's go ahead and tackle that first question. What are the signs that a child or pet is overstimulated?
Well, I do know that some small dogs, as they get overstimulated, they pee on themselves.
Yeah, well, and some children too. But thinking back to, I actually taught kindergarten for a year. One of the first skills you have to develop as a kindergarten teacher is being able to recognize when children have had just a little too much. When recess has gone on just a little too long, or when the party has gone on a little too long, when people have had too much time to eat their cupcakes or whatever, you want to interfere with that by shifting gears right before things go crazy. Because if you let a little too much chaos go on in a young person's mind, gosh, they start getting moody, they start crying for no reason, and everyone knows, oh gosh, they need a nap,
Yeah, you lose control of them too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and they're not doing it on purpose, right? I mean, these kids aren't trying to make trouble. They literally have just had to deal with too much. And I think it's funny that, kind of back to what Walt was talking about, we think as adults we're so far beyond this, but we're not really. We also get overstimulated, just like that little kid that has been spending too much time on the playground.
Know when to stop.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I wrote down as an introduction that I'm a holistic psychiatrist. So this is Alice speaking. And so one of the things that I work a lot on in my patient population is helping them get off their psychiatric medications. And the signal that tells me that things are kind of going awry is, I think of it as the most sensitive indicator of the stress being too much, is when sleep is affected. So I often notice, like, if we're stressed, our sleep then gets a little bit more fragile. We may have difficulty falling asleep. We may have early morning awakening. And these are all signals that we have too much adrenaline, running through our system.
I love that. Thank you so much for adding that. It's always a pleasure to have an expert on the panel. Absolute pleasure. Of course, I talk a little too much about my cats, but when when you're petting them, our cat, my wife and I, we have one cat, Bast. She's extremely suspicious and extremely nervous around people, and you can pet her like 1.5 times. If you do anything beyond that, she puffs up and she starts hissing and she starts getting really aggressive. And we have to remind people she's just a scaredy cat. Like, she's not trying to be a jerk. She's just a scaredy cat. And as I say that, I remember, oh my gosh, I know people who also need to be explained in that kind of a way. It's like, okay, this person, they're not just a jerk. They're not just having road rage or whatever. Like, they have just had too much on their plate. Okay. We have to put this into perspective,
Yeah.
So here's one of those searching personal questions that we tend to ask too much. How can you tell when you're stressed? So what are those signs that you've been able to detect in yourself?
Oh, I can answer this for sure. So, to the new people, hi, my name is Cristina.
Hi.
So for me, for sure, I am moodier. Like, I get snappy and I don't sleep. And you would think that someone who's stressed out or overworked like would want to like sleep more or something, or like would knock out at the end of the night, but I actually don't sleep and it makes the insomnia worse. So it's not good.
This is Walter. I tend to do the opposite. I shut down. I become more quiet, respond less well. I'm more difficult to communicate with. I'm sure Irene can validate that. And my thoughts usually become disoriented and more in the realm of the macabre.
Yeah. As we think about these things, I feel like I should say that we often feel like we have very bizarre reactions to these things. For example, I've been to a funeral not too long ago where someone had the response of being giggly, just being nervous and giggly. And people were giving them a hard time. And I had to step in and say, no, guys. Like, this is actually somewhat normal because, we all deal with stressful occasions in different ways, but when you zoom out far enough, you start to see some patterns. I could totally relate to what everyone's talking about. Personally, I know I'm stressed when I want to pull back and I want to drop all of the things because life can feel like you're juggling, a bunch of things. And when you feel overwhelmed, or at least when I feel overwhelmed, I'm tempted to just, take a break from everything for a week, which, back to what Walt was saying, isn't realistic when you're an adult. But that doesn't mean you don't want to.
When I get overwhelmed, I notice that I can't continue my usual routines. Like, when I'm kind of doing okay with life, I have a certain routine to my life. I have time to do it, and it feels good to have that a little bit of structure in my life. But if I'm overstressed, if I have too much stuff on my plate, I sometimes just let go of these routines, whether it's like journaling or exercise or eating my meals at more regular times in the day. These are routines that I normally would do. But if I'm overwhelmed and stressed, then I throw the routines out the window and I'm just kind of obsessively working on whatever kind of is being thrown at me at the time.
Sometimes we can afford to lose things. We can afford to drop a few routines. But when you push some people far enough, the routines they drop are things like driving safely, paying their bills, treating other people with kindness. When people get pushed enough, then we get into things like criminal behavior.
I see.
Right,
I see.
yeah.
I see.
Let's move on to the next section. Cristina, would you be so kind as to read that?
Yes. In brief and powerful bursts, stress can help us focus on what needs to be done. Act quickly, make life or death decisions, push our bodies to the limit, or simply accomplish great things in a short amount of time. However, when our lives seem too disorderly, chaotic, or out of control on a regular basis, we may experience chronic stress, a condition that can lead to heart disease, weaken our immune system and gut biome, compromise our digestive system, make it hard to sleep or lose weight, and make us feel irritable, depressed, anxious, negative, and overwhelmed. Chronic stress disrupts our ability to learn, remember, or score well on tests. It leads us to do things we regret. It shortens our lives and negatively impacts our careers and relationships. In short, when we're stressed for a long period of time, we are less healthy and more likely to make bad choices that will increase our stress in a positive feedback loop. What kinds of things stress you out the most? I can answer that. Raising children.
Yeah. I think anyone who's worked with children can appreciate that. Children come with their own, bundle of stressors and things like that. And it does take a lot out of you. But from a high perspective, we can say that, well, if anything is stressful or anything should be stressful, I guess it would be raising a new person to take on the world, So that's perfectly understandable. I think for a lot of people, public speaking is the number one stressor, right? Is the number one thing they try to avoid.
I can see that.
Certainly for some people. I don't know if it's for most people.
Yeah, maybe I've heard that wrong.
Maybe it's worth looking it up here.
This is Irene. Well, some people, they feel extremely stressful when they are one-on-one, but some people are extremely feeling stressful when it's present themselves to a group. So there are different types of being stressed out when they need to present themselves. I don't know which kind we all are,
This is Walter. I've actually had the opposite experience. I've used, well, in my case, theater as an escape. Because when I'm on stage or at a podium, I'm no longer Walter Max Adam. I'm someone else. I'm something else. I'm not having to face the mortgage or the fact that currently I'm not employed or all the crap that comes along with life. And I can, sing my song and be someone else. And as soon as the play or the speech or whatever is over, I'm Walter again. And suddenly all that stress flies back at me. So it's like I almost have a pseudo world or something I step into when I'm in, quote, theater.
Yeah, that's cool. So performing, you're not only doing a service to other people, but it's also a type of therapy, I guess would be the right word. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we could look to leading causes of divorce or why people quit their jobs. I think it's fair to say that a lot of that can be related to stress. For example, money problems, if I understand correctly, is the leading, money disagreements is the leading cause of stress and, eventually divorce in a relationship. When we're talking about people who quit their jobs, it goes back to kind of what you guys were talking about before, a one-on-one relationship, a person and their boss. When that relationship sours, it's very common for people to say, well, okay, well, I'm out of here. This can come at us from many different directions, I guess is one takeaway.
For me, the one thing that stresses me out the most is when a patient doesn't do well under treatment, because as a doctor, I'm kind of trained to, I'm expected not to make mistakes and not to fail and not to be not helpful. So when a patient isn't doing well, I do notice that it affects me emotionally, and it really affects me in ways that overshadows maybe other positive things that might be going on in my life at the time.
Yeah, that's understandable. In my experience working with a lot of different teachers, I often get a similar story from them where they literally have to have this kind of mental block when they go home because they think, oh gosh, dealing with people, this is a high stakes kind of a thing, training and helping kids to become adults. I mean, this is a big deal. However, when they're home, they have to completely separate themselves from their work, or else it'll just drive them crazy. It'll just drive them nuts because it's such a big deal.
Right.
Whereas, if we were just making donuts or something all day, that would, completely different story. And this is something that you see, perhaps I'm being a little too general here, but this is something that you see with a lot of people who are in compassionate type of care careers, nurses, teachers, and the like, where it's because they wanted to make a big difference and they wanted to really help people. That's what led them into these fields. But their personality, a personality that has led them to want to be nurturing and generous and compassionate, things like that, it kind of backfires on them, and they feel a lot of the pressure and a lot of the anxiety that comes with the weight of the job. And I've heard similar things with police officers too. believe it or not. So, yeah. How people can really set up that barrier between work and home life, I don't know. I'm not the one to ask about that. But before we jump into the next section, I kind of wanted to go back to a thing that Walt said I found very interesting. Because in my research, I found that a lot of people recommend a particular way to deal with stress, and that is to be generous, to do things like community service, to take a break from your problems and help people with their problems. Kind of like, when you put your identity aside and you assume a new identity on the stage. And I found that very interesting, because there's a lot of truth to that, isn't there? Where if we stew over our own problems, we can really go to a dark place. But if we take on other people's problems with reasonable moderation, that can give us a kind of a break, which I think is really interesting.
In fact, sometimes after a play, I become so manicky, my wife thinks I'm off board a little.
Well, that's why they call it a high, right?
Yeah.
Well, they say that a lot of healers go into their professions because they're trying to address their own problems by helping others with the same issues.
Oh, yeah, very interesting. Who would like to read the next part, the part that says solving problems directly?
I can. Solving problems directly. The first and most effective way to deal with stressors is to attack them at their source. When you feel stressed, try these following steps. Make a list of what is bothering you, what you want to do, and what needs to be done. 2, keep the tasks that are within your power to complete or influence, and cross out all items that are reasonably outside of your control. Number 3, reorder your tasks, placing the most important things on top, followed by what is urgent, and then by what is less important or less urgent. This will help you prioritize what should be done first, second, and so on. Number 4, break large tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks that can be completed in a reasonable amount of time. 5, create and commit to a plan that gives you enough time to work on each task with some wiggle room, clear objectives and completion dates, and which time between tasks for rewards and relaxation. Number 6, get to work. Follow your plan, and if you don't get everything done, you should still find satisfaction in making your best attempt. 7, form good habits, set and follow a routine that balances your productivity with time for rewards and relaxation. What good habits do you have that help you overcome the desire to procrastinate? Well, I'm so good at procrastinating, it's horrible.
Well, for me, this is Cristina. It's keeping a planner. So I like to plan, I like to journal, and keeping a daily planner keeps me focused on what needs to be done. Procrastination does sneak in, but the planning does help. So like, I already know what needs to be done tomorrow. So it's in the planner. I shouldn't deviate, but obviously we all struggle.
Could you be more specific on how you do your planner? Because I've got like 20 different planners, all maybe 2 weeks long.
Yeah. So for me, it's simplicity. It's better. So I like just a regular weekly planner that when you open it, the left side starts with Sunday or Monday, and then the right side ends with Saturday or Sunday, some depending. So just something like that. Or you can just use a plain notebook and then write on the first page, you write week of, and then I just do to-do, bullet point to do, what needs to be done. And I go from there. I don't plan down to the minute. Some people get overwhelmed because they plan down to the hour. From 10 to 7, I'm going to do this. From 6 to 7, I'm going to go to the gym. That is too overwhelming for me. I just do to do. And if it's like super urgent, like must be done today, I use a bright red pen. That is like, if you don't do it today, something really bad is going to happen. I use a red pen. Yeah.
Thank you.
But I keep it very simple. I don't plan down to the minute, and I also don't do the monthly too general because it's easy to forget. So the weekly one has been the best one for me. And I just have a dollar store planner from the Dollar Tree.
Cool.
And this is Irene. So when I write myself a list on my planner is that I allow myself time, extra time, sometimes extra days, so that I can procrastinate. Not to purposely do that. I just know that there are times things would happen, interfere with my plan, right? So, and I write my planning is whatever that's most urgent will be number one and down the list. That way I allow myself to breathe and I don't get too stressed out if I don't get it done that very day or that very week. Most of the time I get them all done because I allow myself space. If it doesn't happen, that's just fine.
So in my situation, I have two forces that are kind of playing tug of war on my brain. The first is I hold myself to an unrealistic standard sometimes, and I want to just do all the things and be extremely productive, even cut into, off time and weekends and things like that. And then on the other hand, I want so much to be as vague as possible because if I make clear-cut plans, there's a chance that I can fail at those plans, right? And I have this instinct to say, well, if I never specified them in the first place, then I can never technically fail to meet them, So the compromise that I'm working on right now, and who knows if this is good or not, first thing in the morning, before I and my wife, go our separate ways to go to work, I basically turn to her and say, okay, well, these are the top, 2 or 3 things that I really need to get done today. And then when she gets home, we kind of have this tradition where I report to her. I would say, well, this is what I got done. And she's super supportive, of course, and says, even if you got half of the first thing you want to do, well, good job, and I appreciate that big time. But yeah, sometimes writing things down is what is the trick. Verbally communicating with other people what your plans are. Sometimes that's the trick. I think similar to other parts of this discussion primer, this one question here, how do you overcome procrastination? It's a very personal question. And I would go so far as to say that one size doesn't always fit all. This is something that we really need to know ourselves on a very intimate level.
Do you find often that every day you seem to have the same list of things?
Oh, well, in my line of work and what I'm doing right now, I'm able to focus on things that vary dramatically from day to day. For example, today I'm working on, research and writing a discussion primer. Another day I'd be working on editing a podcast episode. A different day would be completely dedicated to research. So, I could see, though, that in different lines of work, you might run into that problem that you brought up, Walt, where it would be just a copy and paste of the day before. Gosh, I hope no one's in that situation. That doesn't sound like fun at all.
I know that for me, I found the approach to minimize procrastination may differ depending on the task. But one thing that I found to be very useful in terms of exercise for me, because I used to have gym memberships, but I wouldn't go to the gym. And the day would go by and I would be busy with other things and night would arrive and I hadn't exercised. So what I found is very helpful for that particular area in my life is to be held accountable. And so I did find someone to exercise with, and that person was reliable. And so every time we would exercise together, and that allowed me to avoid procrastinating something that I highly value, but for whatever reason, it's not being done because other things take over and it gets, shoved to the side most of the time.
Yeah, I really appreciate all these comments. We have a great panel today. Can I just say that? This is a terrific group. This is a lot of fun. Let's see. Who would like to read the next part? Emotional management.
I'll take care of it.
Awesome. Thanks, Sage.
Emotional management. After you've done what you can, how can you deal with all the stress that may be left over? When trying to relax, or while lying in a bed, we can still be riddled with anxiety, negative mental chatter, and an elevated heart rate. Times like these are when emotional stress management is needed. If you've done an almost day's work, don't forget to reward yourself. Call a friend, watch a thrilling TV show, pet your cat, play a game, or try a new hobby. Doing these things can help us focus on enjoying the moment. We should always remember that our minds, emotions, and physical bodies are inseparably connected. Stay healthy by getting enough exercise, sleep, water, vegetables, and time with friends, rather than allowing your nerves to fester. Have a few go-to activities on hand that release energy, such as jogging, dancing, gardening, or cleaning. Of course, engaging in breathing exercises and meditative techniques can help as well. What are some of your favorite ways to relax and unwind? So, cleaning is an interesting.
Can I give you my address?
Sage,
No,
if cleaning isn't relaxing for you, Sage, you're doing it wrong.
Well, yeah, I guess I've been doing it wrong all my life. I mean, it's not an energy release. It's many other things, but not that, certainly.
But I mean, seriously though, I mean, folding laundry, doing dishes, these could be tremendously relaxing. Like, am I crazy? Like,
To who? To who? I could tell Nick hasn't done laundry and done dishes with children around.
Yes,
correct.
Nick, I have plenty of relaxation here if you ever want it. I mean,
Yeah, definition. This is Irene for the definition of therapeutic. For one, might not to the others. When I first heard one of the lady friends, she said, "Oh, she loves cleaning when she's upset or stressed out." I thought that was so bizarre, but I live long enough that I understand now that it's a therapeutic for her, but not to me.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I think all of these suggestions are wonderful, especially Walter and I, we've been doing deep breathing techniques. That's really helpful for us. Yeah. Another thing is that we'll go back to that planner, like what good habits do you have there to help you overcome the desire to procrastinate, is that the reason I said that I allow myself room. So if I don't accomplish the agenda of the day or of the week, I can still feel good about it and pat myself on the back because I measure it with extra time for myself. So you feel like a success, rather than spiral into failure all the time. And I think that is a very good method too. So it's always be positive about what we have achieved.
One of my mentors recently, as I was talking with her about going to a 4-day work week and then allowing Saturday, Sunday, and Mondays off for me. And she goes, "What are you going to be doing with that time?" I said, "Oh, I'll be working on a podcast. I have my weekly update to write. I have this clinical things to do and blah, blah, blah." And she goes, "When do you have time to relax and actually have free time to, unwind?" And I thought, well, that was my relaxation. That was unwinding. And I laugh at myself because sometimes, we think that we're relaxing when we're still working, like even though I gave myself a 3-day weekend, I filled it up with all sorts of projects that I expect myself to be accomplishing. And there's still a little bit of a drill sergeant in me going, "You got to do this, you got to do that." And this mentor was bringing to my attention that that's not relaxing. That's not unwinding. You're still working hard, even though it may be fun and maybe it may be more creative. But I have to find a way to really just not have to produce every second of my life, So sometimes, you get trained to not even know how to relax and unwind.
Oh, absolutely. You described my life right there. Because, well, I mean, it's part of our culture. I mean, it's part of being American. We really love workaholics here. We do. I mean, we put workaholics up on a pedestal. And not every culture does that. Not every country admires someone who will work 7 days a week. I would argue that there's some Far Eastern cultures that really are obsessed with working as much as possible and producing as much as possible as well. At the end of the day, we need to step back, zoom out a little bit and say, wait a second, am I completely miserable with how I'm running my life? Is this really what it's all about? And these are really interesting questions and something definitely to chew on. But I say you say the story of my life because one of my favorite ways to unwind is to watch YouTube, and my favorite thing to watch my favorite thing to watch on YouTube is political news. And so, yeah, as you can all imagine, I can spend an entire day just keeping up with current events, and then stressing myself like crazy. So yeah, I'm working on it, guys. I'm working on it. Okay. Admitting I have a problem is the first step.
I'm sorry to say this. This is Irene. You're doing the exact same thing that I am to relax myself. I can sit in front of YouTube's watching politics all day long and just fine. But it will stresses my husband out, listening to the politics all day long.
Beg her to watch Saturday Night Live things.
Awesome. Yeah. See, and then I'll go on Twitter, like it just keeps compiling on itself, But okay, well I think we all could use a little bit of stress prevention. Let's see. Sam, could you please read that for us?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Stress prevention. Just as a bicycle needs a tune-up from time to time, our lives tend toward disorder and need to be routinely reorganized. By living a more orderly life, we can better avoid foreseeable stressors as well as have the positivity and energy needed to deal with the stressors that take us by surprise. The following sections detail a few good ideas and habits. Feel free to try them out.
Awesome, thanks. Let's see. Walt, could you please read the trim the fat part?
Trim the fat. Life can feel like a juggling act. The good news is that we all have things that are okay to drop. Automate what you can. Resist the urge to make too many promises or take on too many responsibilities. A good rule is to never do for others what they can do for themselves. Focus on what you need to do and ignore all the other things that demand your attention, such as keeping up with the Joneses or keeping up to date with social media. Try not to lie, gossip, or add to interpersonal drama. Consider where you waste the most time and resources with diminishing returns, and then trim the fat. What is something you do a little too much of?
Man, I could listen to Walt read all day. Am I right, people? Like,
Yes.
thank you so much for that. That's great.
Oh, it's using the diaphragm to speak with.
Yeah, it's very theatrical.
Too much of, I think we all have many things. Like I myself am also a physician, and you have to see your patients and then you have to do your documentation. And before you know it, you're doing 5 or 6 12-hour days a week. Yet I can't see where to trim any fat from that.
Well, we just need to get them to remove some of that paperwork.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
talk to the
Yeah. When every time I do like management, kind of like management webinars or things with work or whatever, they always say like, learn how to also like delegate to others, that people, they're capable of holding on to more responsibility than you think. Don't underestimate your team's capacity to take on a little bit more so that you don't feel so stressed and you don't have so much on your plate. But not all professions allow to that. And I have the personality of, if I did it myself and it didn't turn out 100%, I wouldn't mind beating myself up. But then if I gave it to you and it didn't turn out 100%, it's like, it wouldn't be fair for me to beat you up, but I will beat you up. So I don't know. So it's like, just let me do it.
Yeah.
The solution partly that I came up with for this is replacing what I do with something else. for most of my life, I have enjoyed the martial arts. I hate any other kind of exercise. But for some reason, I love martial arts. And it's kept me happier. And then about 15 years ago, I suffered a major injury and I couldn't do it anymore. So I entered another realm of depression. And I just started doing it again with the understanding that I am only going to do what I can do, which is essentially upper body stuff. I'm getting my punching bag up and I'm getting ready to pound on some of that stress.
As a quick side note, I want to bring up real quick, Waltz. There are men in their 90s that are really into kendo, the Japanese swordsmanship. And so since you're already into martial arts, just as a quick side note, you might enjoy looking into learning a little bit of the form of the samurai, because that's something that we can do in every stage of our life, which could be a lot of fun.
I had problems finding a studio. I actually almost got my black belt in the Korean version of Samurai, and the studio closed, and well, there she went.
Uh-oh.
Well, what are you doing now?
Kempo, which
Okay.
is a Japanese fusion of Shaolin Kung Fu and Okinawan Karate.
That sounds like a ton of fun. I know.
The teacher's way full. Yeah.
I know Sage is really into sword fighting too.
Oh, how wonderful! I'd like to meet more people. It's been a while.
Well, we fight every week, so.
Take out your swords.
Right?
If you want to do some light fighting with sticks, you're definitely welcome.
That'd be fun. What form do you do? What style? I mean.
Oh, well, variety of different stuff, everything from HEMA to foam combat, picked up lightsabers. Most of it's a little less historically stylized than that, though, and is more based on how it applies to the specific sport in question.
Okay. It sounds like you really enjoy it.
Oh, very much so.
So what is something you do a little too much? I'm not sure. What is it, Gus?
Snacking for me.
Oh, snacking. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, for me, I can say it's complaining, because one of my
Oh, you could put me on that one too.
yeah, well, this is kind of one of my coping mechanisms when I'm very stressed out. You have to release the steam somewhere. It's like we're all little teapots. And one way that I release that steam is to just voice what's bothering me, just really give form and put into words the name of my oppressor, the details of what's bothering me. And like I said, my incredibly supportive wife, she didn't ask for me to rant for 2 hours at her. You know what I'm saying? And so even though,
let's be honest.
Right. How's it going, Jacob? Good to have you.
Sorry I got in here at the end, guys. I only noticed Nick's message like 5 minutes ago.
No, it's cool,
Happy to
man.
have you.
Yeah, we're definitely happy to have you. But yeah, just because something's good, if you do it a little too much, of course, then it can backfire. So I suppose if I can get to the point and voice my concerns and then back away from it, that's probably the best way to handle that.
Maybe you might try venting in a journal.
Oh, that's a great idea. See, that's way better than Twitter.
Yeah. Yes.
Also, you can spare your wife.
Absolutely. No, these are all great inputs, guys. I really appreciate it. We are getting a bit beyond our schedule, though. So who would like to read Everything Needs a Home?
Okay, this is Irene. I can do that. I'll give it a try. Everything needs a home. After we've cleaned and organized our living spaces, we tend to feel more energetic, hopeful, and positive. Set time aside every week to go through your belongings and ensure that every item, dish, sock, or a paperclip has a designated place where it belongs. When you are finished with your bedroom, move on to organize your car, workspace, and beyond. Your ideas could also use a home. So try keeping to-do lists. shopping lists, creative ideas, etc., in separate places. Question of the day is, what are the stress prevention methods that work best for you?
For me, it's trading Star Wars cards on the computer with an app.
I'm pretty sure a couple of us have that app. Because I know there's a bunch of Marvel ones, and I know Jacob is really into trading card games and stuff. So
there was only one, and it went to crap, so not anymore.
I started doing a routine after reading a book called The Miracle Morning. Have anybody read that book here?
No.
Okay.
I haven't.
So The Miracle Morning, what it does is it suggests that when you wake up in the morning, you set aside about an hour and you do 6 different things. And each of those 6 things you spend about 10 minutes on. So what they suggest is the first one would be spend time in silence, kind of like a meditation, then visualization, then affirmation, then there's journaling, and then there is exercise.
Did you mention meditation?
Meditation,
breathing,
Trading Star Wars cards.
Yeah, so there's like 6 different things. I'm forgetting the last one, but so this is kind of like a routine that you can do, and they say, just start the morning off with that routine. So you get up a little earlier, get that routine done. And when I started doing that, I did find that the rest of the day will be a lot more productive. And, life flows a lot more easily when you start off the day taking care of yourself. So you're nurturing yourself.
yeah, I really like that because I feel like part of the charm of that is that it is built on 10-minute segments.
Right.
That's wonderful. Like we when we over plan or when we plan things in large chunks, half hours, the morning, the afternoon, or whatever, then if we drop the ball, it's that much more tragic, right? It's a lot easier to just say, you know what, I'm only going to dedicate 10 minutes to this. I love that idea. That's fantastic.
Oh, the 6th one is reading. That's what it was.
Your comment, Irene, reminds me of a friend of mine who was in the military. And he said that one of the most important parts of your day was the very, very first part where you make your bed. And he said, no matter what happened, no matter what mistakes you made, or no matter how intense your day was or how boring, you at least did one thing right. You at least made your bed. And I thought that was a great little psychological tool, a great little thing to put right on the top of the day.
Yeah, like the subtitle here said, everything needs a home. I personally prefer everything has its place. I'm not obsessed about it, but I do prefer down to the group of paper clips, Some people are not like that, especially if you marry someone. Then I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm a pile person.
Well, and I can defend this idea a little bit more because this is one of the most dramatic intervention techniques that I was able to employ as an educator. If a kid's grades were slipping and slipping and slipping, and they were getting further and further behind in their homework, usually my first attack would say something like, okay, well, is your backpack organized? Is your desk organized? Are your folders organized? Because when they weren't, just so many other problems would spring from that, and I, just like what you were saying, some kids will say, well, that's just not my personality. I'm not a very organized person, and I would reply in a way with something like, well, that's okay, but we want to set you up for success. So let's go ahead and get all these things organized. I would often say that a messy desk leads to a messy mind. And even as an adult, when I'm looking at my own desk or looking at my own, suitcase or whatever, I can't help but remember that, that I really need to get things organized so that my mind can be better organized.
Well, that statement has given me impetus to further attempt to organize my everything.
Yeah. And this is something, let me go on a little side rant here. This is something that I wish would get a little bit more attention, because we talk about how our physical health impacts our mental health. We talk about how our, smells and colors, can influence your mood and things like that. But we very rarely talk about how just your living space has a dramatic effect on your mood and your outlook and your level of patience and your optimism and things like that. Oh yeah, there's a tremendous overlap there. And so perhaps we shouldn't just be focused on mental health and physical health. Perhaps we should also add a category to take into account our surroundings. They have just as profound an impact.
I just have a thought. This is Irene. And to prevent stress, we need to know ourselves well enough to know when to stop and when to push forward. When can we handle more and not to be afraid or ashamed to say no or to cross off something from our list, say, nope, this is it. This is all I can do.
And Irene says that because as her husband, I have a very good IQ, but unfortunately, I also have a history of traumatic brain injury. So what I might have been able to do, I no longer can, even though everything in my being wants to do it.
May feel very frustrating to you, huh, Walt?
Oh, highly.
Yeah.
So I got to know my limits.
Yeah. We all should. So we don't get overstressed. Yeah.
Absolutely. And this is what you bring up, Irene, is a theme that we keep coming across. We've talked about so many different philosophical ideas. We've talked about Plato, we've talked about Nietzsche, we've talked about Eastern philosophy as well. And this is one of those predominant themes that keep surfacing. There's so much of life. I mean, there's so much more we can do if we just sorted ourselves out just a little bit. If we just understood our weaknesses, our strengths, just a little bit better. I'm really glad you brought that up. Jacob, could you please read for us the last section right there?
All right. Plan ahead. Last but not least, we should set aside time to plan out every day, week, and month. When we're confident that we have a good plan, it is easier for us to relax in our downtime.
And of course, we've been flirting with that idea this whole time.
It can be difficult to plan ahead if you don't really have anything to put down.
Well, let me submit this idea. If you don't have a lot to do, or if your schedule is, if you have the opposite problem, if your schedule is the same every day, week, and month, then you now are in a position where you could start planning your free time, not based on what you have to do, but based on what you want to do.
It's a good point.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting hurdle that I've seen with some of my older friends who have now gone into retirement. They're so used to playing whack-a-mole, with all of these pressing matters that need their attention right away. And now they have a hard time. There's this transition that they have to go through where they really struggle with saying, gosh, do I want to go to the park or do I want to see a movie? I don't even know how to prioritize these, So perhaps we can all practice a little bit structuring our free time, because according to what we've covered so far in this discussion primer, structuring your free time can be as important as structuring your work time, especially if you're having a hard time focusing on the moment, focusing on relaxing and things like that.
Mm-hmm. I also find that this area is an area of weakness for me because throughout my life, I feel like a lot of my time is planned for me, or I'm told what to do with this or that. And so for me to plan ahead and take control of my life and anticipate what it is that I want to do, it's a nice shift, but it's also unfamiliar, because a lot of times it's external circumstances that sometimes drives my decisions about what to do. And sometimes I might cope by not planning ahead or ignoring what's going to be happening in the future because I'm just focusing on the present moment too much.
I'm glad you said that because there's another little thing that we should add here as a side note, devil's advocate, sometimes some chaos, some uncertainty, an unplanned adventure, sometimes these sort of things can add spice to life and make things very exciting and fun and, spontaneous. So let's not forget that there's a balance act that needs to go on here. We do want to allow for a little bit of craziness, a little bit of chaos, a little bit of uncertainty, because that really does enrich this experience we call life. But don't let that get overboard. Don't lean too heavy into that. So, moderation in all things. We keep coming back to that, but that really is something important to keep in mind.
I also want to add, life is a journey. Just enjoy every bit of it, and that helps you to look forward and appreciate what's behind you, but look forward. Yeah.
Being said, a journey planned is much better than a journey done on the fly, as me and Sam can attest.
I have a question about this kind of a meetup group, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So I noticed that you covered different topics, of course, each week, but a lot of the philosophers I've not read myself. So how do you, should I not come to the meetup if I haven't read the philosopher or their, books in the past? Or how do you handle the structure of the meetup for topics that may be covering a philosophical discussion that involves, reading that we're unfamiliar with?
Well, let me first say that you and I are in good company because I have not read most philosophers either. And I still come to the meeting, and I just come with a bunch of questions. And I think everyone appreciates when I have questions. Am I wrong?
Nick writes the primers with the intention of most people who read it having no background knowledge. It's a very layman's first, toe dip into most of these topics.
Yeah, and that I appreciate the question. It's a terrific question. Yeah, most of our discussions are focused around certain universal themes. And when we do look at a specific world religion or a philosophy or even a science topic, we try to focus on these themes one at a time that are shared by that philosopher or that worldview. And so, we hope to focus on those ideas that we can all apply in our lives, even if we're secular or even if we live a few thousand years in the future after this philosopher, and so that is the real focus. We've had people that do a little homework ahead of time. When we have experts like Alice, we really appreciate that because that can help us make corrections and keeps us on our toes, keeps us honest. But the vast majority of our guests and visitors and fellow free thinkers are people who are brand new to the topic. That's a lot of fun too. So part of it's educational, but a large part of it is more conversational. Great question. I really appreciate that.
I feel like, this is Irene, I felt like I'm on NPR. The depth of the discussion here. I'm totally not prepared. But I enjoyed it, though, thoroughly.
Oh, I enjoyed it as well. We'll go ahead and wrap things up and get into our break and into the second half of the meeting. But before that, I just wanted to say again, I really appreciate everyone's comments today. We agreed on a lot of things, which is fortuitous, but we don't always have to, and that's okay.
No, Nick, obviously you shouldn't organize your life and go off the fly all the time. Come on. Who needs a stick schedule?
I mean, YOLO, we only live once. Hey.
Well, I'm glad we all got the thrust of the argument today. If you have enjoyed this conversation or have learned something from it, please leave a like, subscribe, and share it with other open-minded people. All of those small things really do make a big difference and help others find our organization and our podcast. Thank you. That is all I have for you today, but the conversation continues across social media and in the comment sections below. Do you agree with today's message? Am I mistaken about some detail? What feedback or ideas do you have for this program or for the Free Thought Forum? Feel free to share your perspective.